I flew to Florida expecting a family visit. What I found was my son dying alone in a hospital bed while his wife partied on a yacht. Betrayal cut deeper than the illness itself, but justice had its day. If you believe no mother should ever face this alone, subscribe now and join me as I uncover the truth, fight back, and build a legacy my son would be proud of. The message ending my career came sooner than I imagined. One day, I was wrapping up my last security review at our NATO base in Germany. The next, I was boarding a flight bound for Florida. At 60, after 39 years in uniform, I, Colonel Danielle Hayes, was officially retiring. My compass, the one my father pressed into my hand before my first deployment, rested in my pocket. "Always come home, Danny," he'd said. And I had. But this time, the homecoming felt different. I hadn't told anyone, not even my son, Michael. He was 34 now, married 5 years, building a life in Naples. I pictured his easy smile, the way his eyes used to light up when I surprised him at ball games. It was enough to carry me through the overnight flight. But when the taxi turned onto his street, my stomach tightened. The neighborhood lawns were neat, porches swept, except Michael's. The grass was knee-high, the mailbox stuffed, curtains drawn. I pushed open the unlocked door and froze. Michael lay on the couch, skin ashen, his breath ragged, pill bottles scattered on the coffee table. I dropped my duffel and reached for him, my heart hammering. And then the phone on the counter buzzed with photos, my daughter-in-law laughing on the deck of a yacht, champagne in hand. While my son lay dying, she was out partying. Neglected and fading. It didn't look like a home, it looked abandoned. I stepped from the taxi, the Florida heat already pressing against my neck, though the sun was barely up. I was about to knock when a voice called from across the street. "Colonel Hayes?" It was Mrs. Alvarez, Michael's neighbor since he moved here 5 years ago. She stood in her driveway with a watering can, her face pale, eyes wide. "Hello, Rosa," I said, walking toward her. Her garden was immaculate as always, bougainvillea climbing the trellis, finches darting from a feeder. I thought I'd surprise Michael. She set down the watering can, twisting her apron with both hands. "You don't know, do you?" My fingers tightened around the compass in my pocket. "Know what, Rosa?" Her glance darted to Michael's house, then lowered. "He's been in the ICU 2 weeks. They took him by ambulance in the night. I saw the lights, heard the sirens." "And Emily?" I pressed, my voice sharp, thinking of my daughter-in-law. Rosa's expression soured. "She's been on a yacht in Key West. Parties, boutiques, drinking, all over social media, all while Michael—" She trailed off. The air thickened, my knees weakened, and Rosa steadied me with her rough hand. "Naples General," she whispered. Moments later, I was pushing through hospital doors, the sting of disinfectant meeting me head-on. The nurse's eyes shifted when I gave my son's name just enough to make my stomach plummet. "5th floor," the nurse said softly. "Room 512. ICU waiting room is just off the elevator." I pressed my father's compass so hard the edges bit into my palm as the elevator climbed. My thoughts spun in circles, each darker than the last. Michael had always been strong, athletic. He'd inherited his father's frame and easy stride. What could have brought him here in just weeks? The ICU hallway was hushed, broken only by the mechanical beeping of monitors and the squeak of rubber soles on polished tile. I stopped outside room 512. The curtain was drawn across the small window. I knocked once, then pushed the door open. The sound hit me first, the rhythmic alarms, the hiss of oxygen. My son lay in the bed, pale, his face hollowed, his body diminished beneath a thin gown. Tubes and wires webbed over him, machines breathing where his strength once did. A physician turned from the monitor. His voice was steady but tired. "I'm Dr. Reynolds. Are you family?" "I'm his mother. Colonel Danielle Hayes," I managed. "Mrs. Hayes, your son has advanced gastric cancer. It's spread to his liver and lymph nodes. We've done what we can, but—" He stopped, shaking his head. I gripped Michael's hand, icy and fragile under mine. "Has his wife been here?" Dr. Reynolds's eyes hardened. "We called. At first she said she was out of town. After that, only silence." Michael's eyelids stirred, then opened. Hazel eyes I'd known since boyhood found mine, fragile but alive. "Mom." The word was rasped, barely air. His lips cracked, his breath shallow. "You're really here." "I'm here, Michael," I whispered, wrapping my hands around his fragile one. "I'm not going anywhere." "Oh." A faint smile trembled on his lips. "I wanted to call my phone." The sentence dissolved into silence. "Don't worry about that now," I soothed, slipping into the same rhythm I'd used when he was a boy waking from nightmares. His hazel eyes found mine, sudden clarity burning through the haze of painkillers. "I love you, Mom," he whispered. Before I could respond, the monitor wailed one long, merciless tone. Michael's hand slackened in mine. "Code blue, ICU room 512. A voice rang as nurses swarmed past me. Dr. Reynolds pressed a button, his face taut with urgency. I was ushered into the hall, frozen, listening to orders barked and hands thudding against my son's chest. Minutes or hours later, the door opened. Dr. Reynolds stood there, shoulders heavy. "I'm sorry, Colonel Hayes. We did everything we could." The compass in my pocket felt like lead. I had come home too late. The ride back to Michael's house blurred past palm trees, bright skies. Nothing touched me. On my lap, a plastic bag, his wallet, the watch I'd given him, his phone drained of life, his gold wedding band. The house sagged under the afternoon sun, lonelier than ever. I fit the key into the lock, stepping into air stale with neglect. Empty glasses gathered dust. A bottle of scotch sat uncapped, and silence pressed in. The framed photos I remembered from my last visit, Michael's college graduation, our fishing trip in Montana, his wedding day, were gone from the mantel, leaving pale rectangles on faded paint. In the kitchen, takeout containers and dishes leaned in precarious towers, a sour smell rising from the sink. The hum of the refrigerator was the only steady sound. On the counter sat the pile of mail Mrs. Alvarez had mentioned. I thumbed through them. Utility shut-off warnings, overdue credit cards, mortgage notices. My chest tightened. Michael had never been reckless with money. Even as a boy, he saved his allowance, counting every dollar twice. This chaos was foreign. A frame lay face down on the counter. I turned it over Michael in a suit, Emily beside him in white silk, her smile polished, her heels the kind that cost more than my pension. I set it down, bile rising. How could that woman abandon him? I checked his office. The chair was pushed back as if left in haste, papers scattered across the desk. In the center, a laptop sat closed, cable dangling. Among the clutter, a thick stack of receipts. A $75,000 yacht rental in Key West. Cartier and Miami jewelry, $50,000. Luxury resorts, boutiques all charged, while Michael lay in ICU. I stacked them, each slip of paper an indictment. Emily hadn't just abandoned him, she had bled him dry. Stepping into the master bedroom felt like crossing a boundary, but I needed answers. The king-sized bed was unmade, sheets twisted as though someone had left in haste. Michael's side glasses on the nightstand, a book half read, remained orderly. Emily's side was chaos. Designer bags strewn open, clothes discarded in careless heaps, makeup cluttering an ornate vanity. The closet told an even harsher truth. Michael's suits and weekend shirts still hung neatly, but her half was stripped bare. Empty hangers littered the carpet, as though she'd swept out everything valuable. In the bathroom, prescription bottles lined the counter, hydrocodone nearly full, anti-nausea pills, untouched, acid reducers, nearly gone. Michael had been ill far longer than I'd realized, quietly managing symptoms until his body collapsed. Back in the kitchen, the mail pile waited. Sorting through it, I found the letter that sealed the story, a denial for a CT scan, marked not medically necessary. It had been opened, then sloppily resealed. Someone had read it, someone had ignored it. I pulled out my phone, rage tempered by the iron discipline drilled into me through decades in uniform. Emily's number still glowed in my contacts. My thumb hovered only a moment. The video connected. Her face appeared, framed by a sunlit yacht deck, laughter and music roaring behind her. "Well, look who finally called," she smirked, sunglasses hiding her eyes. A long second stretched between us. Emily's smile faltered under my silence. "Is something wrong?" she asked finally, sliding her sunglasses to the crown of her head. "You look different." "Michael's gone," I said flatly. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. Her expression cracked for a heartbeat. Then she lifted her glass and shrugged. It was inevitable. He'd been sick for months. Nothing anyone could have done. I forced my breathing to remain even. And the charges? The yacht rentals? The jewelry? Her laugh was careless, edged with arrogance. I'm his wife, Danielle. What's his is mine. That's marriage. The ease in her tone chilled me more than her words. No grief, no shame. I studied her face carefully, the gold hoops, the glossy ponytail, the drink swirling lazily in her hand. Enjoy the view while it lasts, I said. She tilted her head, mistaking my warning for a compliment. Oh, I will. That, I whispered, leaning forward until my face filled the screen, was your last party on my dime. I ended the call. Her frozen smirk lingered on the black screen. Setting the phone aside, I reached for my father's compass, its cool metal steadying me. That evening, I returned to Naples General. The nurse's voice softened. He asked about his wife every day that first week. I nodded, though the words cut deep, and stepped into the still room where Michael lay at rest. He looked peaceful now, the pain erased from his face. But this wasn't my Michael anymore, just the shell he left behind. I sat beside him, holding his cold hand. I'm sorry I wasn't here sooner, I whispered. I should have visited more. I should have seen the signs. My mind replayed our last video call months ago. He'd looked thinner, shadows under his eyes. I'd asked if he was sleeping enough. He'd brushed it off. Just a big project, Mom. Was he protecting me, even then, while I wrapped up my final posting overseas? On the small table beside the bed lay his wedding band. I picked it up, the inscription catching the light. Forever yours, E. A promise as hollow as Emily's devotion. I slipped it into my pocket beside my father's compass. Michael had loved both those symbols, one from a man who'd given everything, the other from a woman who had taken all she could. I'll make this right, I vowed, squeezing his hand once more. At the nurse's desk, I asked if anyone had visited. She scanned the log. Just one Thomas Alvarez, brought books and a radio, Rosa's son. At least one friend had stood by him. That night, back at Michael's house, I opened his leather portfolio. Inside lay documents, birth certificate, marriage license, and a sealed envelope stamped, Power of Attorney. I tore it open, bracing for what I'd find. Michael had granted me power of attorney before my last deployment, a precaution we'd agreed on. In case something happened while I was overseas, he wanted no gaps in protection. It had seemed unnecessary at the time, but Michael was a planner, every inch his father's son. The document was dated 18 months ago, properly notarized, never revoked. My hand steadied as I read it. Training took over. I had a mission, clear parameters, lawful authority to act. I photographed everything: receipts, bills, prescriptions, the power of attorney itself. Evidence secured. Mission parameters established. By morning, I was on the road to Tampa, a folder of documents riding shotgun, the original POA tucked inside my bag. The highway blurred, but my resolve only sharpened. I had one ally in mind, Colonel Richard Hale, my former commanding officer, retired now into military financial administration. His calls got returned. His paperwork never sat in piles. His office, near MacDill Air Force Base, gleamed in steel and glass. The receptionist straightened as soon as she saw my uniform. Colonel Hayes to see Colonel Hayes, I said evenly. Richard met me at the door, handshake firm, silver threaded through cropped hair. My son died yesterday, I said without ceremony. While he lay in ICU, Emily spent his accounts dry. I slid the folder open, exposing the yacht receipt on top. Then I placed the power of attorney beside it. And here's the POA Michael signed before my last deployment. I need everything frozen, every account, every card today. Richard flipped through the folder, his brow tightening at each receipt. He stopped at a photo of Emily on the yacht, the timestamp matching Michael's third day in intensive care. He set it down. You don't need to say more. Let's move. For 40 minutes, the office filled with the staccato rhythm of keys and clipped phone calls. Richard knew exactly which managers to demand, which forms to expedite, which language cut through excuses. I tracked his process like an operation briefing, storing every step. Yes, I understand this is unusual, I heard him say, voice crisp. But this is exploitation of an incapacitated individual. The power of attorney is valid, executed before illness. If you'd prefer, I can have JAG counsel looped in within 5 minutes. It worked. One by one, Accounts froze, cards canceled, payments suspended. Finally, Richard slid a printout toward me. All assets secured, mortgage covered, balances transferred under your authority. I exhaled, the first steady breath since Naples General. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, he warned. She'll fight. Women like her don't surrender easily. He was right. Before I left the lot, my phone lit with Emily's name. I ignored it as messages poured in, first curses, then bargaining. Not once did she say Michael's name. The real fight was still ahead. The late sun stretched long shadows across Michael's driveway as I returned from Tampa. 2 days in Naples, and already the ground beneath me had shifted. My retirement, once a milestone, now felt like a trivial detail beside the enormity of loss. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez was tending her bougainvillea. She set down the hose when she saw me, concern deepening the lines around her eyes. "How are you holding up?" "I'm managing," I answered, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. "Thank you for keeping an eye on the house." She nodded, glancing at the overgrown yard. Thomas visited him a few times. They weren't close in recent years, but he cared. "If you need help, I can mow this weekend." Thomas could fix that gutter. The offer nearly cracked my composure. Practical, genuine kindness. That would be wonderful. First, I need to sort inside. She patted my arm gently. "One step at a time, Colonel. That's how we get through." Inside, I went straight to the study. The air smelled of paper and dust, blinds half drawn. Michael's desk held neat stacks of documents, envelopes, pens, and a firm logo mug. In the bottom drawer, beneath manuals, I found a small leather notebook, edges worn, spine creased. I opened it. At first, grocery lists, home repairs. Then, the tone shifted. Each entry was dated, numbered, written in Michael's precise script. March 8, $3,000 Emily's procedure, not covered by insurance. April 12, $5,500, roof repairs after storm. May 3, $7,000, new transmission, labor excessive. I flipped through, my stomach twisting. The amounts escalated, always with tidy explanations, all tied to Emily's needs or household emergencies. The last entry, just 3 weeks earlier, $12,000, Emily's mother's emergency surgery in California. Flight plus hospital expense. I pulled the bank statements from my bag, cross-referencing line by line. The truth emerged sharp as steel. The procedure was a Palm Beach spa. The roof repairs matched a Miami luxury boutique. The car transmission aligned with a designer watch down payment. And Emily's mother, she'd been dead 3 years. I remembered Michael telling me how devastated Emily claimed she'd been. I gripped the notebook hard enough my knuckles whitened. My son had trusted her utterly. She had siphoned that trust into vanity. I searched Michael's phone, relieved to find no passcode. Typical Michael, too kind, too trusting. Most texts were mundane reminders, colleague notes, bank alerts. Emily's thread was scrubbed almost clean. But in archived files, I found it, a screenshot. Emily to someone named Alicia. Might as well enjoy his money while I can. Doctor says he won't last long. Already moving funds into my account. My hand trembled, not from shock, but from resolve. This was more than betrayal. This was calculated cruelty. Her words were documented in her own hand, and I would make sure the world saw them. By sunset, I had compiled everything into one file: bank statements, receipts, photographs, Michael's notebook entries, and the damning text thread. Military precision, repurposed for civilian warfare. Emily had declared war on my son. She was about to learn she had left me standing. I called Richard again. "I need a lawyer. Estate fraud. I know the man. Edward Martinez, former JAG, now private practice. Bulldog in court. He protects veterans' families like they're his own." I wrote down the number, thanking him. Before we hung up, he added, "Check Michael's life insurance. If Emily's named, we need to block her fast." The reminder chilled me. I searched his emails. There it was, a $500,000 policy through his firm, Emily listed as sole beneficiary, but also a smaller private policy he'd taken out before meeting her with me as beneficiary. A mercy in the storm. My phone rang for the 12th time that day. "Emily, I answered. Where is my money? She demanded. No grief, no pretense. Safe. Away from you. You can't do this, I'm his wife. I inherit. I have power of attorney, I said calmly. She laughed harshly. That ends when he dies. I'm the widow. I own everything. Did you ever love him? I asked. Silence, then a scoff. Love is for people without better options. Michael was generous until he got sick. I let the weight of my words drop. I found his phone. And your text to Alicia. Her gasp told me she finally understood this battle had only begun. Those are private, Emily snapped. You had no right. Neither did you. I cut in, my voice cold. You had no right to drain my son's accounts while he lay dying alone. No right to marry him under false pretenses. No right to his home or his legacy. You can't prove anything, she tried, but the edge of doubt cracked through her tone. I was gathering intelligence on insurgents before you could walk, I said, 40 years of service threading steel into every syllable. Trust me, I have everything I need. I ended the call, setting the phone gently on Michael's desk. Across the street, Mrs. Alvarez's porch light glowed warm, a reminder that not everyone was like Emily. Tomorrow, I would call Edward Martinez and begin the legal battle. Tonight, I had to face the unthinkable. Planning my son's funeral. A parent should never bury a child. In Michael's closet, a box labeled Mom's Things waited. Inside were photo albums, my service medals, and letters his father once wrote. At the bottom, wrapped in tissue, was a picture of the three of us, Michael perched on his father's shoulders, me laughing beside them, the Gulf of Mexico stretching endlessly behind. I pressed it to my chest, tears coming at last. Tomorrow would be for justice. Tonight I allowed grief its place. The military had taught me to compartmentalize, to stay on mission even when emotions threatened to break through. That discipline was keeping me upright now. By 7, I was showered and dressed in the one civilian outfit I had packed, dark slacks, a button-down shirt. I'd need to buy something suitable for the funeral, but I pushed that thought aside. Focus on the task at hand. Mrs. Alvarez caught me at the door, a covered dish in her hands. Breakfast casserole, she said firmly, pressing it into my arms. My mother's recipe. Thomas will mow the lawn later. Her eyes were rimmed red. We all loved Michael. He was such a kind young man. I thanked her quietly. In the service, we called it covering your sick someone watching your back. I hadn't expected to find that kind of support in this quiet neighborhood. Edward Martinez's office sat in a converted historic home in downtown Naples. Solid, respectable, no flash. The receptionist ushered me in at once. Colonel Hayes, he greeted, rising from behind a desk stacked with case files. He was younger than I'd expected, early 40s, hair cropped short, posture sharp. Richard Hale spoke highly of you. Thank you for seeing me so quickly, I said. Martinez listened carefully as I laid out receipts, notebook entries, screenshots. The power of attorney is vital, he said. We can seek emergency relief to freeze assets and contest her claims. Civil fraud charges are strong, criminal possible but more complex. But, Martinez added, catching my hesitation, we can build a criminal case in parallel. I'll speak with contacts in the state attorney's office. By the end of our meeting, we had a clear plan. Martinez would file emergency papers that afternoon to preserve Michael's assets and begin contesting Emily's claim as sole heir. One more thing, he said as I rose. The life insurance through his firm shall likely move fast. We'll notify the company of potential fraud. I nodded, grateful for his foresight. What do you need from me? Keep gathering evidence, he replied. And steel yourself. Cases like this get ugly when money's involved. Back at Michael's house, the lawn was freshly mowed. Thomas Alvarez, tall and broad-shouldered with his mother's kind eyes, was steadying the loose gutter. Least I can do, he said simply. Michael was good to me when we were kids. While he worked outside, I pressed on inside. Following Martinez's advice, I searched for anything to establish a timeline of Emily's fraud. In the study closet, I found a fireproof safe. My birthday opened it, so like Michael, it made my chest tighten. Inside were his passport, social security card, and several USB drives labeled by year. Plugging the newest into his laptop, I uncovered meticulous financial records. The shift after his marriage to Emily was stark, modest living, turned into reckless luxury. One folder stood out, chilling in its simplicity. Emily background. I opened the folder, breath catching as the files loaded. Michael had hired a private investigator 3 months earlier. The report was damning. Emily, daughter of a once affluent family ruined in a financial scandal, had cycled through wealthy men, leaving each buried in debt while she floated on a tide of excess. Michael's notes were appended to the file, confronted Emily about Aspen charges. She denied everything, says I'm paranoid. Maybe doctors write stress affecting my mind. We'll ask Dr. Chen about medication. My fist tightened around the mouse. She hadn't just stolen from him, she had twisted his mind, gaslighting him into doubting his sanity. It was psychological warfare, dressed in marital vows. The deeper I dug, the worse it grew. Emily had been married twice before. Both unions brief, both ending in settlements that padded her accounts. One ex-husband dead of heart failure. The other vanished overseas. My son hadn't been her first target, he'd been the latest in a long con. I copied everything to a fresh USB for Martinez, making a note to call the investigator listed. He might have more. Outside, Thomas finished the gutter, brushing off my offer of payment. Neighbors help neighbors, he said simply. That night, arranging Michael's funeral with military honors, I closed the laptop just as a new email pinged. From Emily. Subject: You'll regret this. Inside was a single chilling line. Check the basement storage room if you want to know what your precious son was really hiding. Emily's email hit its mark, meant to sow doubt. But Michael's house didn't have a basement, or did it? Florida homes rarely did, though I'd seen small below-ground storage areas before. I swept the house again, eyes sharper, trained. In the utility room, behind stacked boxes, I found it, a narrow door disguised as an electrical panel. It opened onto a cramped staircase descending into darkness. The switch revealed a 10x12 space, concrete walls, dehumidifier humming, shelves stacked with holiday decorations, textbooks, boxes marked by year, ordinary, until I spotted the floor one patch of concrete a shade lighter, recently disturbed. Training took over. I pried it open with a screwdriver. Beneath was a small metal box, holding a USB drive and a handwritten note in Michael's careful script. Mom, if you're reading this, it means something happened to me. Everything you need is here. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted to handle it myself. I love you, Michael. My hands shook as I carried the drive upstairs. Whatever Emily thought she'd twisted, my son had been one step ahead. I plugged it in. A single file opened, dated 3 weeks earlier. Michael's gaunt face filled the screen. His voice was faint but steady. Hi, Mom. If you're watching this, things have gone badly. I guess. Michael tried a smile that never reached his eyes. There's something else you need to know. Emily, he sighed, running a trembling hand through thinning hair. She's not who I thought she was. I found out she's been siphoning money, hiding it in offshore accounts. When I told her about the diagnosis, his voice cracked. She asked how long I had left and if my life insurance was paid up. The raw pain in his eyes crushed my chest. I've gathered evidence, he continued, stronger now. Account numbers, transfers, recordings. It's all on this drive. I've tried to protect what I can, but Emily is resourceful. She thinks I'm oblivious, but the investigator I hired found everything. He leaned closer to the camera, eyes fierce despite his frailty. Mom, I know you'll do what needs to be done. I've updated my will carefully so she wouldn't suspect. The lawyer's info is in the file marked Gibraltar. Contact him as soon as possible. He looked away, then back, expression softening. I was happy once. I've made peace with what's happening. Don't blame yourself for not being here. You've always been there when it mattered. I love you, Mom. The video ended on his face. Pain became action. I opened the Gibraltar file, Miami attorney's contact, trust accounts, offshore wires, recorded conversations, Emily's own voice sealing her fate. If you believe no mother should ever have to fight this kind of war alone, hit subscribe right now, because in the next chapter, I'll show you exactly how I turn my son's evidence into the weapon that brings her empire crashing down. Now it's too late, and I'm stuck watching you die when I could be enjoying myself. Emily's voice was sharp, recorded without shame. Michael's weak reply pierced me. Is that all I am to you? A bank account? Her laugh was cold. Don't be dramatic. You were fun, but let's be honest, I married you for financial security. And now I have to wait around while you waste away? It isn't fair. You could leave, Michael whispered. And lose my claim? Not a chance. Your mother's going to be shocked when she finds out her perfect son left her nothing. The recording shifted. Emily's voice, this time on the phone. Might as well enjoy his money while I can. Doctor says he won't last long. Already started moving funds to my personal account. I forced myself still, military discipline keeping me from hurling the laptop across the room. The evidence was devastating and exactly what Martinez needed. I called immediately. Michael left a hidden cache of proof. You need to see it. I'll come now, Martinez replied. While waiting, I found one more file. Michael's revised will, notarized 2 weeks before ICU. Emily was granted only the legal minimum. The rest a trust for scholarships, charity, and legacy. When Martinez arrived, I showed him everything. He nodded firmly. This isn't defense anymore. This is prosecution. Fraud, theft, even abuse of a vulnerable adult. The hearing was set, tomorrow, 10 a.m. Be prepared for Emily to fight dirty. People like her always do when cornered, Martinez warned before leaving. Alone in Michael's study, surrounded by his evidence, guilt pressed heavy but beneath it, resolve burned. She had waged war on my son. Now she would face his mother, a veteran with nothing left to lose. At dawn, I dressed in the Navy suit I'd purchased the day before civilian, but structured, authoritative. The USB drive in my pocket felt like ammunition. The courthouse stood 30 minutes away, all glass and steel, sterile against the human pain inside. Martinez met me at the steps, briefcase packed with files. She's here, he murmured. With Gregory Pearson, expensive, aggressive. I nodded. We have truth. He gave a tight smile. Truth needs evidence. Luckily, we have both. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, wooden benches, the Florida state seal above the bench. Emily sat in the front row, black designer dress, hair pulled into a severe bun, face painted with manufactured grief. Beside her, silver-haired Pearson leaned close, whispering strategy. Her eyes flicked to me, narrowing before she resumed her mask of widowhood. Judge Eleanor Winters entered, gray-haired, shrewd-eyed, commanding instant silence. Case number 2025, CF 4931, the clerk intoned, in the matter of the estate of Michael Hayes, emergency petition for control of assets. Martinez rose. Edward Martinez for Colonel Danielle Hayes, mother of the deceased, holder of durable power of attorney. Pearson stood. Gregory Pearson for Emily Hayes, widow and legal heir. The battle began. We have substantial evidence of systematic financial exploitation during Michael Hayes' terminal illness, Martinez began. Pearson shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is nothing more than a grieving mother trying to disinherit her son's lawful wife. The power of attorney Colonel Hayes waves around died with her son. Judge Winters raised a hand. I'll hear both sides. Mr. Martinez, continue. For 40 minutes, Martinez laid it out piece by piece. Bank records proving Emily's spree, while Michael lay in ICU. The investigators' report tracing her pattern of exploiting wealthy men, screenshots of messages where she plotted to siphon funds. I sat tall, eyes forward, posture unbending. Once, I allowed myself to glance at Emily. Her widow's mask slipped, revealing calculation as she whispered fiercely to Pearson. When Martinez played the recording of her saying she'd already moved funds while Michael was dying, murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Winter's face stayed neutral, but her eyes sharpened. Pearson countered smoothly, attacking authenticity, painting Emily as a loving wife blindsided by tragedy. These were marital assets, he argued. Florida law protects spousal rights. Colonel Hayes is attempting to weaponize grief. When both finished, Judge Winters turned to me. Colonel Hayes, what are your intentions? I rose, voice steady. To honor my son's final wishes, charitable trusts for underprivileged students, to protect his legacy. Winters nodded, then fixed her gaze on Emily. Mrs. Hayes, do you wish to respond? A perfect tear slid down Emily's cheek. Your Honor, I loved my husband. These accusations are cruel. The act was flawless, but evidence spoke louder. The crack of Judge Winters' gavel was sharp and final. Emily shot to her feet. Grief mask gone, rage flooding her face. You can't do this, she screamed. That money is mine. The house is mine. Control yourself, Mrs. Hayes, the judge warned, "or I'll hold you in contempt." Emily spun toward me, eyes blazing. "You'll regret this, Colonel. I know people in Michael's life you've never met. This isn't over." Bailiffs moved in as Pearson whispered frantically to calm her. Martinez gathered our files and steered me toward the hall. His mouth twitched into a small smile. "Round one to us. But she's right, this isn't over. They'll appeal. They'll hunt for loopholes. Next step, secure the house, change locks, inventory everything. She'll try to strip it bare." By the time we reached Michael's home, we were too late. The front door stood ajar. Sounds of chaos rattled inside. Martinez dialed the police as I rushed in. Emily and two men I didn't recognize were shoving belongings into boxes. The living room lay in ruins, drawers emptied, glass scattered. She clutched a framed photo of Michael, then dropped it deliberately. The glass shattered, my son's face fractured. "Just collecting my things," she sneered. I stood tall, voice razor-edged. "Step away from my son's belongings." One thug stepped forward. "Lady, leave before this gets ugly." Martinez appeared at my shoulder, phone raised. "That sounded like a threat," Martinez said firmly. "And it violates the court's restraining order. Police are 3 minutes out. I suggest you stop now." The younger man faltered, glancing at Emily. Rage twisted her features, but calculation won. She dropped a porcelain vase that smashed across the floor. "Fine. Take this dump. Michael was pathetic anyway, weak, just like his father must have been. You military types are all the same. Discipline, no spine." She swept past me, her perfume sharp in the wreckage. At the doorway, she paused, venom in her voice. "This house? Mortgaged to the hilt. I made sure of that. Good luck paying it off on your pension." The two men followed, lugging stolen bags. We didn't stop them. Martinez's phone documented every detail. Electronics, jewelry, artwork gone. Personal mementos smashed or scattered. Minutes later, police lights strobed across the lawn. The officer in charge, a veteran by the service pin on his chest, promised, "We'll file charges for violation and property destruction. Recovery will be harder, but this will strengthen your case." After they left, Martinez arranged new locks and a security service. By dusk, the crisis had eased, but exhaustion pulled heavy. "You won today," he said gently. "Michael would be proud." Alone, I swept shards of glass from my son's broken photo. His smile, fractured but still shining, gutted me. Emily's cruel words lingered, missed birthdays, lonely milestones. But I knew better. Our bond had lived in letters, late-night calls, and his voice always closing with, "Proud of you, Mom." Hadn't Michael and I understood each other's sacrifices? As I set the broken frame carefully back on the mantel, my phone rang. Richard Hale. "We won the emergency hearing," I told him, steadying my voice. "But Emily ransacked the house before we secured it." Richard exhaled sharply. "Not surprised. People like her lash out when cornered. It only strengthens the criminal case. She claimed the house was heavily mortgaged. Can you confirm?" "I already checked," he said. "Michael's primary mortgage was modest, but 8 months ago, a second loan for nearly $200,000 was filed with Emily's signature beside his. The sting was sharp but not unexpected. Where did it go? That's the problem. The funds vanished into the Caymans, laundered through shell companies. This isn't just fraud. It smells like organized crime." The weight of his words settled between us. Emily might be more than a con artist. She could be tied to something far bigger. "I'll call financial crimes enforcement," Richard said. "If this ring exists, they'll want her." After we hung up, I sat amid the wreckage. My mission had expanded. Not only justice for Michael, but protection for others she might target. She mistook my discipline for weakness. Tomorrow, the bank, the funeral, the courts. Tonight, grim resolve steadied me. At the funeral home, Director Sarah Daniels guided me gently through arrangements. Michael would receive military honors. He had earned that. Military honors were confirmed, a flag ceremony befitting the son of 2 decorated service members. "We have an opening this Saturday," Sarah Daniels said gently. "Would that work for you, Colonel Hayes?" I nodded, though my throat tightened. I pictured rows of chairs, filled with people who had known and loved Michael. But who would those people be? My deployments had often kept me apart from his adult life. I knew colleagues' names, but little of his friendships. As if sensing my doubt, Sarah added, We usually create a memory board with photographs. We can also place a notice in the paper. Yes, please, I said quietly. And flowers, gardenias if possible. They were his father's favorite, and Michael adored them. Her smile was warm. We'll take care of it. Don't worry about attendance, your son was admired. People will come. After leaving the funeral home, I drove to Naples Community Bank, where Michael kept his accounts and a safe deposit box. The manager, Michael Fernandez, greeted me. Colonel Hayes, we're ready for you. I'm deeply sorry for your loss. Your son was a good man. His voice softened. When my boy showed interest in architecture, Michael sat here an hour teaching him to sketch. That's who he was. The words pierced me with grief and pride. In the vault, the safe deposit box revealed familiar documents: birth certificate, his father's medals, the house deed. Among them, a sealed envelope in my son's handwriting. Mom, if you're reading this, the doctors were right. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner about the diagnosis, Michael's letter began. I kept hoping there'd be better news to share, but there's something else I couldn't say over the phone. Emily isn't who we thought. She's been stealing from me for months, draining my accounts for a life I never lived. When I confronted her, she just laughed, said it was too late for me to stop her. I've gathered evidence. You'll find it in the hidden storage room off the utility space. I also revised my will with Attorney Drake. His contact info is enclosed. The scholarship trust is secure. She can't touch that. Mom, I want you to know I've had a good life. Your strength after Dad died showed me courage. I've tried to face this with the same dignity. One more thing, please look after the Foster Architecture Mentorship Program. I've been volunteering there for 2 years. Those kids remind me of myself. They just need someone to believe in them. I love you, Mom. Always. I folded the letter, pressing it to my chest before slipping it into my jacket. The bank officer politely pretended not to see the tears I wiped away. The remaining envelopes confirmed what I already knew. Emily's thefts were systematic, calculated. Back in Fernandez's office, I asked about recent activity. Significant withdrawals and wires, he admitted. We flagged them, but Mrs. Hayes confirmed authorization. For what it's worth, I never trusted her. She spoke like the money was already hers. 6 months, 400,000 gone. Martinez met me at a quiet cafe near his office, his brow furrowed as I slid the bank documents across the table. This strengthens our case, he said, scanning the withdrawals. But Emily's attorney filed an emergency appeal this morning, claims the evidence was obtained illegally, and that Michael wasn't of sound mind when he revised his will. That's absurd, I shot back. Michael was sharp until his final days. We'll need his doctors to testify, Martinez said. I've already contacted Dr. Reynolds. The hearing is set for next week. Before we could plan further, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I excused myself. Colonel Hayes? This is Detective James Morales, Naples Police, Financial Crimes. We need to talk about Emily Hayes. An hour later, I sat across from Morales in a stark interview room. He was compact, sharp-eyed, carrying the weary calm of a man who'd seen too many scams. Your son may not have been the first, he explained, opening a file. We've tracked similar cases across Florida, wealthy, often ill individuals marrying partners who drain their assets. He spread photos across the table, 3 women, each resembling Emily in different disguises. She's part of an organized ring, Morales said flatly. They target, seduce, marry, then strip everything. A chill spread through me. What happens to the victims? Morales's jaw tightened. Most die sometimes naturally, sometimes suspiciously. I thought of Michael's half-full prescriptions. My voice was steady. Tell me how I can help. My voice stayed calm despite the storm inside. Whatever you need, I told Detective Morales. He requested access to Michael's home to search for evidence and urged me to continue the civil case. Keep her busy while we build criminal charges. I nodded. Consider it done. That evening, the house felt altered less. A shrine of grief, more a battlefield. I moved through each room like an investigator. Prescription bottles half full. Had Emily tampered with them? Food in the fridge, had she laced anything? Michael's sudden weight loss haunted me. Cancer? Or something else? I was still examining labels when a knock broke the silence. Through the peephole, Emily stood there alone, casual clothes, hair pulled back. Against instinct, I opened the door, chain still engaged. What do you want? My voice was ice. To talk, she said softly. 5 minutes. Please. We're both grieving. This fighting isn't what Michael wanted. Her performance was polished. The quiver in her voice, eyes red from stage tears, arms wrapped around herself. If I hadn't seen her texts, her offshore accounts, I might have believed her. You have 3 minutes. Speak from there. For a second, her mask slipped irritation flashing before returning to sorrow. I know you think I used him, but he loved me. Yes, I spent money, but that was our arrangement. Is that why you were on a yacht while he lay dying? I asked evenly. Michael insisted, she whispered, tears glistening. He didn't want me to see him suffer. His last words were, "Live your life, Emily. Be happy." The audacity was staggering, but instead of rage, I felt clarity. Emily wasn't just greedy, she was a predator, honed in the art of deception, and suddenly I saw my chance. You know, Emily, I said, softening my voice, maybe you're right. Fighting isn't what Michael would have wanted. Perhaps we should settle this privately. Her eyes lit up, surprised but triumphant. Exactly. No lawyers, just us honoring his memory. I nodded slowly. Come by tomorrow afternoon. We'll talk terms. She smiled, almost giddy. Around 2? Perfect. The moment she left, I called Detective Morales. She's agreed to meet me privately. I want the house wired. Don't meet her alone, he warned. I won't, but this could make her slip. By morning, Morales's team had discreetly set up surveillance in the living room and kitchen. He coached me carefully. Act overwhelmed. Let her think she's in control. Push her to talk about the money and, if possible, Michael's care. At 2 sharp, Emily arrived, her mask of sympathy flawless. She carried a small gift bag, her eyes darting around the house cataloging valuables rather than grieving. I brought you something, she said sweetly. Inside was a framed photo of Michael, the same one she'd smashed days earlier, now replaced. I felt awful about what happened to this. Her performance was perfect. Almost. Because I knew what she really was. Michael always loved this picture. Emily's attempt at sincerity was so contrived it might have been laughable, if not for the stakes. I set the photo on the coffee table with a murmured thank you. Can I get you something to drink? I offered, sticking to Morales' script. Tea would be lovely, she replied, sinking into the couch like she still belonged there. In the kitchen, I steadied myself, then returned with 2 steaming cups. Emily had drifted toward Michael's desk, rifling through the bank statements I'd left visible. So much paperwork when someone dies, she sighed, sliding back into her seat. It's overwhelming, I said, letting weariness creep into my voice. I'm a soldier, not an accountant. Her smile widened, shark-like in its sympathy. Exactly. Courts and lawyers waste time and money. Michael would hate that. I let the silence hang, prompting her. We can settle privately, she pressed, leaning forward. You keep sentimental things. I'll take the house, the accounts, his life insurance. You'll also get $50,000, enough to be comfortable. No messy fight. I feigned hesitation. That feels uneven. Michael wanted me cared for, she insisted smoothly. Then, with a sigh, truth is, he knew he was sick long before he told anyone. By then it was too late. Her words were calculated to suggest negligence, to erode any claim of her interference. That doesn't sound like my son, I said softly, emotion breaking through. Emily's mask hardened. You weren't here. You left him alone. Then, just as quickly, she softened again. I'm sorry. We're both grieving. And now we must respect Michael's wishes, I said evenly, including his decision to leave most of his estate to charity. Emily's smile faltered. That document was signed when he was medicated, barely coherent. His real wish was for me to be cared for. He told me that. And the recordings where you laughed about spending his money while he lay dying? Were those his wishes too? Her mask cracked. Those recordings are fake. You set me up. You poisoned him against me. So you admit he wasn't of sound mind? When did that begin, Emily? Before or after you moved his money offshore? She shot to her feet, tea forgotten. This was a mistake. I tried to give you a dignified exit. If you want war, Colonel, you'll get one. It's already begun, I replied calmly. The police are curious about your other identities, and those men who died after marrying you. Her face drained. You're bluffing. Detective Morales sends his regards, I said. He's especially interested in your Florida operation targeting the sick and wealthy. Panic flashed, then she straightened. Prove it. My lawyer will bury you. Perhaps, I said, but the FBI doesn't need a jury to freeze flagged offshore accounts. Emily hissed, grabbing her purse. This isn't over. Actually, I replied, showing her out, you're just another predator, and you made the mistake of targeting my family. After she stormed out, Morales emerged from the back room. We got it. Her reaction seals it. Enough for an arrest warrant. The next morning, Emily Hayes was arrested grand theft, fraud, exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The search of Emily's condo revealed multiple cell phones, identification documents under at least 3 different names, and a laptop filled with evidence tying her to similar schemes in Georgia, Texas, and the Carolinas. News of her arrest broke by noon, headlines splashing her photograph across every local station. By evening, Martinez called. Emily's attorney just withdrew irreconcilable differences. She's toxic now. Without counsel, her civil appeal collapses. Control of Michael's estate is effectively yours. It should have felt like a triumph. Instead, it felt like a hollow echo, victory arriving too late. 4 days later, Michael's funeral was held at St. Augustine's Chapel in Naples. To my astonishment, the pews overflowed. Colleagues from his architectural firm, clients whose homes bore his designs, even city officials he'd quietly helped with pro bono projects all came. Most striking were the rows of teenagers near the front, each wearing a small compass-shaped pin. Mrs. Alvarez sat close beside me, her hand steady on mine as the military honor guard folded the flag and placed it in my arms. After the service, a tall man in his 40s approached. Colonel Hayes, I'm David Foster. I direct the architecture mentorship program Michael volunteered with. He gestured toward the teens. These are his students. One by one, they stepped forward, Maya with her sketchbook, Jamal with his story of shadowing architects. He believed in us, Maya whispered. For the first time in weeks, my grief carried a thread of pride. We recently lost a key grant that funded half our operating budget. I've been scrambling to find replacement funding, Foster admitted, leaning back in his chair. Michael knew about it. He was brainstorming ways to keep us afloat, but his voice trailed. I studied the photos again, Michael smiling with those kids, the compass pins gleaming on their shirts. For the first time since his death, I felt something other than grief. Purpose. What do you need to survive the year? I asked. Foster hesitated, then answered quietly. About $75,000. It covers software licenses, field trips, stipends for guest architects, enough to keep the doors open. I thought of the charitable trust Michael had established. He already planned for this, I said. We'll ensure the program doesn't just survive, it thrives. Foster's relief was visible. Colonel, I don't know how to thank you. You can, I replied, my voice steady. By keeping Michael's legacy alive, these kids deserve the future he envisioned for them. As I left the warehouse, sunlight spilled across the street, and for the first time in weeks I felt steady on my feet. Emily had taken so much, but she hadn't destroyed Michael's vision. And now, it was my mission to carry it forward. Thomas Alvarez pulled off his work gloves as he approached, the late summer sun catching the sweat on his brow. Colonel Hayes, he greeted me respectfully. I was wondering if I could volunteer here. For the program. I blinked in surprise. You want to help with construction? He shook his head. More than that, my mom told me what Michael did for those kids. I've been working construction crews for years, but I never felt like it amounted to much. Seeing what you're building here, I think I'd like to mentor too. Maybe teach the students about the practical side of building. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. Michael would have liked that, I said quietly. The teens on site noticed Thomas quickly, and within minutes he was showing them how to read load-bearing marks on the old beams. Their enthusiasm mirrored his own, and for the first time in months, I felt hope stirring not just for the project, but for the ripple effect Michael's legacy was creating. That evening, as I locked up the site, I realized the mission had expanded. This was no longer just about finishing Michael's work, it was about building a community around it, and I was ready. Dr. Chen paused beside Maya and Jamal's model, her eyes softening as she traced a finger just above the delicate framework. He told me this was his proudest work, she said quietly. Not the buildings, but the kids. He said they gave him purpose when the treatments drained everything else away. Her words pierced me with both pain and pride. Even in the darkest months of his illness, Michael had chosen to focus on others. It was exactly who he had always been, quietly building, quietly giving, never asking for recognition. As we continued the tour, Dr. Chen glanced at me. "I hope you know, Colonel, that he fought hard. He wasn't ready to leave, not until he knew the program would continue. He believed you would carry it forward." Her faith in me, in what Michael had set in motion, settled into my bones like a calling. Standing in the completed center, surrounded by laughter and hope, I realized this wasn't just his legacy, it was now mine as well. That evening, after the last guest departed, I remained in the gallery. The golden light of sunset filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the models. I placed my hand on the plaque bearing Michael's name and whispered, "Mission accomplished, son," and the mission continues. The pediatric oncology unit smelled faintly of antiseptic, but the walls were painted with bright murals of dolphins and sailboats, the kind of cheerful imagery meant to soften harsh realities. A volunteer guided me to the playroom, where a few children sat at low tables covered in coloring books and puzzles. "Colonel Hayes?" a nurse asked softly, recognizing me from the visitor's log. "Dr. Chen mentioned you might come." She led me to a small boy seated in a wheelchair near the window. His frame was fragile, but his eyes shone with a determination that was achingly familiar. "Ethan," the nurse introduced. "This is Colonel Hayes. She knew someone who cared a lot about kids like you." Ethan looked up from the Lego set in his lap. "Hi, did you build things too?" Michael said, "Buildings make people feel safe." The mention of my son's name caught me off guard. "You knew Michael?" Ethan nodded. "He used to visit, showed me how to draw a bridge, said I was an engineer at heart." The lump in my throat made words difficult. I crouched beside him. He was right, and I think he'd want me to finish what he started with you. "Oh." Ethan smiled, small but resolute. "Then let's build something big." In that moment, grief shifted into something steadier, a mission reborn. At the nurse's station, I introduced myself and asked about volunteer opportunities. "We always need readers for the children," the charge nurse explained kindly. "Many parents can't be here during the day because of work, and some children don't have regular visitors." As she spoke, a small figure in a wheelchair rounded the corner. A thin boy with close-cropped dark hair, a NASA t-shirt 2 sizes too big hanging on his frail frame, and bright blue sneakers that seemed louder than his voice. "Ethan, you're supposed to be resting," the nurse chided gently. "I am resting," he argued, grinning, "just resting while moving." His spark, shining through the pallor of chemotherapy, hit me like a memory of Michael at that age, the same determination, the same stubborn refusal to yield. "This is Colonel Hayes," the nurse introduced. "She's interested in reading with our patients." Ethan studied me with surprising gravity. "You were in the real military? Not video games?" "Army." 40 years, I confirmed. His eyes widened. "Did you ever jump out of planes?" 17 times. "Cool." He exhaled in awe. "I'm gonna be an astronaut. That's why I have to beat this stupid cancer." The blunt courage in his words stirred something deep. "NASA would want someone exactly like you," I said softly. His grin lit the hallway. Within an hour, I was reading The Right Stuff aloud in the unit library, Ethan listening intently, other kids drifting in to join us. That first afternoon turned into a promise and a mission. Mine is called Alien Zapper, because it's killing the bad cells like in Space Invaders. Dr. Chen, whom I now saw regularly during my visits, kept me updated on Ethan's progress. "He's responding well to treatment," she told me 6 weeks into my volunteer work, "but he's approaching a critical phase where he'll need more intensive support. The foster system is struggling to find an appropriate placement." The words lingered, heavy with implication. That evening, I sat in Michael's study, now slowly becoming my own workspace, surrounded by estate papers and design drafts for the center. My military career had left little room for family beyond Michael. I'd been a mother, yes, but often absent when duty called. Now, in my 60s, retired and reshaping a life from loss, could I provide what Ethan needed? The question felt daunting. Was I trying to replace Michael? No. This wasn't about filling a void. It was about one child with specific needs that I was uniquely positioned to meet. I had stability through my pension, space in Michael's home, support from the center, and most importantly, time. The decision formed not as impulse, but as mission clarity. If Ethan needed a stable home, I would provide it. The process was rigorous background checks, interviews, training but familiar in its discipline. 3 months later, Michael's guest room had been transformed into Ethan's. The walls were painted navy blue, constellations glowing across the ceiling, a room for healing, for hope, and for dreams beyond illness. Bookshelves held volumes about space exploration, science, and astronomy. A desk by the window was equipped with a telescope Michael had owned as a teenager. Mrs. Alvarez arrived with a handmade quilt patterned with planets and spaceships. "Thomas and I thought Ethan might like this," she said, placing it carefully on the bed. "The whole neighborhood is excited to meet him." The community that had carried me through my grief was now expanding to embrace a child none of us had known 6 months earlier. The foster center teens had created a welcome card signed by all of them. Dr. Chen coordinated with Ethan's medical team to ensure continuity of care. Even Detective Morales stopped by with a vintage NASA poster he'd found at a garage sale. When the day finally came to bring Ethan home, I felt nerves I hadn't experienced even in combat. What if he hated the room? What if I failed him? But when Ethan wheeled inside, his face lit up as he explored, arranging his few belongings with quiet pride. That evening, on the patio, watching the sunset, he asked, "Who was Michael? I see his pictures everywhere." I told him about my son, the architect who had believed in young people. Ethan nodded solemnly. "That's good. People shouldn't be replaced. But there can be new people, too." In that moment, I understood. Grief and new beginnings could live side by side. His introduction to the teens at the foster center had been seamless. They immediately adopted him as their mascot, the little brother who inspired them all with his courage. Ethan's shelves filled with space books now also held volumes on architecture and design, gifts from students who wanted him to dream as broadly as Michael had. 6 months after Ethan moved in, the final legal proceedings against Emily concluded. She accepted a plea deal, 25 years for fraud, exploitation, and based on forensic evidence medical tampering. The wider investigation revealed 7 other victims across 3 states, with charges pending for her co-conspirators. Martinez delivered the news himself, along with the last documents closing Michael's estate. "It's over," he said quietly. "Justice, as much as the system can provide." That evening, Ethan and I walked to the beach, a ritual we'd built together on his stronger days. He carried Michael's candid photograph, the one of him laughing at the foster center celebration, and I brought a small lantern. At the shoreline, I placed the frame in the sand, and Ethan anchored it with a smooth stone he'd found in the garden. We stood silently, the tide touching but not taking. I thought of the flight that had brought me to Michael's bedside and how it had instead led me here with Ethan's hand in mine, grief transformed into a new kind of family. "Ready to go home?" I asked. Ethan nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Yeah, I think Michael would like what we did with the place." Home, at last, felt like more than walls. It was legacy rebuilt into life. I've shared my journey not for pity, but for connection. Justice came late for my son, but his legacy continues through the lives we're touching today. If my story moved you, please subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Comment below, tell me how you would have stood beside me, or what you'd say to a mother in my place.